Today I'm canning beets. I'm actually going to be canning my pickled beets and preserving them in my steam canner. So this is my steam canner, which I absolutely love. It's a huge time saver compared to water bath canning, and it is now safe to use as a canning method. I'd say for the last, I think it was, can't remember exactly the year that this was finally approved. Could it be 2017, 18, 16? I can't remember. This is my favorite method now instead of water bath canning. Canning beets is a very simple process. Really what takes the longest is probably cooking and washing your beets. So that's what we need to start with. We're going to get our beets washed. Just as a reference, I didn't pick these beets from my garden. I purchased them this morning at a market, and don't get me wrong, these beets are absolutely beautiful. If you can have beets that have a little bit of the stem left on, like the leaf part, and it's trimmed to about 1 inch or so, it's better because your beets won't bleed as much. They won't lose as much color. But I didn't have that choice. I bought these and this is how they had them trimmed. So, but they're still beautiful. I just might have a little bit more color loss. So let's get these washed up. I just use a scrub pad like this. I find that's what works best. You can use a brush, or these beets are actually pretty clean. I've got all my larger beets washed. And so I've already got these in a pot. I'm going to separate them by size a little bit because the larger ones will obviously take longer to cook. So I've got my large beets here in a pot. I've got the heat on. We're going to bring this to a boil and probably cook them, the larger ones, somewhere around 35 to 40 minutes in unsalted water. So while that's starting, I'm going to continue washing my smaller beets. Everything is washed on the stove, starting to cook. I did find a beet that had a little bit of the stem left over. So this is what I mean by when you leave a little bit of the stem on, it kind of stops it or reduces the amount of bleeding or the amount of color that's going to go into your water. So I'm going to pop that one in as well. And now we just have to cook everything. Now while our beets are cooking, we're going to prepare the liquid that we're going to pour into our jars. I guess like the pickling juice. So we're going to prepare that. Now keep in mind, I am tripling the batch because there's nothing I hate more when I'm starting to make something and I'm backfilling my jars and I run out of liquid. So I'm tripling the recipe just to make sure that I'm going to have enough. If I have some left over, what I do is I put it in the fridge for the next batch of pickled beets that I want to make. So to your pot, you're going to be adding 7.5 cups of white vinegar. Make sure you're using a 5% vinegar. 3 cups of sugar. And 3 cups of water. I'm not a spicy pickled beet kind of girl, but you can also add like a little steeping sack with pickling spices, and you would put that in your liquid and boil it for maybe about 5 to 10 minutes. Since I don't like the spices, I don't add them. So all I need to do with this liquid now is to put it on the stovetop and bring it to a boil just to dissolve the sugar. I am going to wait a little bit to make sure my beets are cooked because I need this liquid to be really hot when I put them in the jars. While everything's cooking, I'm going to give you a quick steam canning lesson in case you're unfamiliar with steam canning. If you are familiar with steam canning, skip ahead. But the reason why I love the steam canner so much is because number one, it's so light. Like it's insane. It weighs nothing. And this is the tray in the bottom that you put your jars on top. Now for the amount of water that you need to put in it, so all you need to do is to fill your canner up to where the tray is, which is about like there. So see? So you just put a little bit of water. Up to the bottom of the tray, as you can see. See the water there? And then what I do while I heat up my water is I add my jars to my canner to heat that up as well. So my jars are nice and hot. So as you can see, I can add 3, 6, 7, 8 jars at a time. Just to show with the cover on top. So once my jars are filled with the product, with whatever you're steam canning, and remember it has to be a high acid. This isn't made for any low acid foods. So if it's not pickled, or like a jam, a jelly, a relish, a salsa, chutneys. Those are all safe to use a steam canner. Any vegetables, any meats, any soups, any stews, they must be pressure canned to be safe. Once my jars are filled and in my steam canner, you're going to put your cover on top and bring it up to a really hard boil. There's a hole in the back of the cover there, so you'll see the steam coming out of that. You'll know when it's boiling really hard. Sometimes you can see the cover kind of lifts a little bit. It kind of comes up when it's really starting to boil. What you need to watch with your steam canner is this dial right here. So I need to be in the dark green section before I can start timing whatever it is that I'm steam canning. Once it gets to that green section, I start timing. Once you get up to the appropriate temperature for your altitude, you need to lower the heat, always making sure that your dial stays in the appropriate range. Steam canners can't be used for foods that take longer than 40 minutes to process because your pan will run dry and it will create an unsafe product. So if it's longer than that, you'll need to do the traditional water bath canning. So I hope this helps if you're new to steam canning, and now it's time to go check on my beets to see if they're cooked. Once your beets are cooked and cool enough for you to handle, what we need to do is to cut off both of the ends. That's scrap or for your compost pile, and then you're just going to slip the skins off. And I put gloves on for two reasons. One, I can handle the beets hot a little bit better, and as well, it doesn't stain my hands. So you just slip the skin right off. As you can see, it comes right off of your cooked beets, and I'm going to put them aside in another pot. So you just make your way through all of your beets doing this. And the reason why I'm saving the skins is because you can dehydrate these skins, and I have a video on that if you want to check that out. And you can use that dehydrated beet powder in soups, in smoothies. It's really nutritious and delicious. Once all the peels are removed, then you're going to cut them up into bite-sized pieces. Just the important thing here is just to try to get them all even. If your beets are really small, you can even leave them whole. I also have my liquid now heating up as well on the stove because we are going to reheat this before we bottle them, just to make sure everything's nice and hot. I have all my beets cut up and now in my pot with my pickling liquid heating up here. And because I'm a little doubtful that I have enough liquid, I am heating up some more. I did make another small batch beside it, so that's heating up as well. Once this comes to a boil, I'm going to quickly put these in the jar and then they'll be ready to process. It's time to put our beets in the jars. My jars are heating up on the stove in the steamer over there, so I'm going to go get those and we're going to start. We are filling our jars, leaving 1/2 inch headspace. Once you have your beets in your jars, you're going to backfill the jar up to 1/2 inch with the liquid. Then make your way through all your jars. Make sure there are no bubbles trapped in your jars. Wipe the rims of your jars with water. This will make sure that your caps seal properly. Center your caps on top. And your rings fingertip tight. Then you're going to transfer your jars over to your canner. The canner is full. Time to put the cover on and start this first batch. I'm going to put the heat up and let this come to where I need to be for my altitude.
30 minutes later.
Batch number 1 is done. We just need to let this sit for 5 minutes once I turn off the stove. 5 minutes are up. Time to take the cover off and remove the jars from the canner. I'm going to get batch number 2 going. I'm going to replenish the water. I'm not sure if I said, but I had to process those beets for 30 minutes. So we're going to heat up our canner for batch number 2. In the meantime, my other beets are cooling off. As usual, you need to leave your beets untouched, or anything that you're canning untouched, for 12 to 24 hours. You just let them rest, let them sit, don't move them around too much. It could affect the seal. Always write on top as well what you made, the year, because sometimes it lasts longer than you expect. Before you put them away for long-term storage, it's also a good idea to wipe down your jars, just in case anything kind of seeped out of the jar and you don't want mold growing on your jars when they're in storage. So make sure you clean them well. I do hope you like my channel. I hope you like this video. If you do, give it a big thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe and check back again soon to see what other content I will have coming out.